I'm Kyle Russell with Arkansas Wushu, and today I have 5 tips for you to help you with your kata. I'm making this video to help those who are working on their forms, or their kata, or their taolu, whatever you call it in your style. For when you're working on your own and you need some things that you can look for without having too advanced knowledge to still be able to kind of fix your form and make it look better. Tip 1 I'm not going to count, but that is video yourself. Often you want to see what you're doing. When you're doing your kata, you can't see you, so you're not going to recognize your mistakes. You're not going to know you're doing them unless you videotape yourself, play it back, and get an honest look at how your performance was. I often record myself, watch my performance, and say, that looks weak, it looks abbreviated, too many pauses, I got to go back and redo it. And video has really helped me perform a little bit better or be more conscious about my performance in that moment. Okay, so moving on, tip number 1 is pay attention to your stances. I know I started in Shotokan and stances were not a huge ordeal. You see a lot of people with just straight leg their stances. And as you can tell, that looks pretty sloppy, pretty lazy. So that form is Heian Shodan. When I do that one thing I like to do is stop, work down. If I can see my toes, I know my knee's not bent enough. So I'll bend my knees to where when I look down I can't see my toes. Now work on getting my back straight, posture straight, keep that stance looking a lot better. Now on those stances you don't want to be too high because the higher you are, the more sloppy and the more lazy it looks. So the lower down you can go, the better it looks. The one negative about that is the lower down you go, the harder it is to move from one position to the next position smoothly. So you want to take your stances down deep to where they challenge you. You can feel them working your leg muscles. There's no strain on your legs, but you can still move from one position to the next without too much of a hassle. Okay, so moving on to tip number 2. In tip number 2, we're going to look at the withdrawing hand. Now, a lot of times whenever people withdraw this hand, they don't pull it all the way back to their waist, or they let it dangle, and it just looks bad because, like I said, if I'm doing Heian Shodan and I go here, and this hand's just kind of loose and dangling here and here, it looks sloppy. It looks undisciplined, and it gives that whole performance just a bad look. So you want to make sure whenever you do this, every time you withdraw that hand back tight on your hip, on your waist, or wherever it goes, because it's not the same in all styles. Some styles pull back to the hip, some pull up a little higher, like right under the rib or underneath the arm even. And some styles don't pull back to the waist, but rather pull back to a guard, or may have a wipe off, or you could be blocking with the other hand in certain forms. But always know what the non-striking hand is doing, where it's supposed to be, and how it's supposed to be held. The answer is never, it's not doing anything. It should always be blocking, positioning, something. Okay, moving on, tip number 3, kind of part of number 2 as well. So make sure your hands are tight. I see a lot of these, even on a striking hand, loose and sloppy, like I'll see people do these knife hand blocks. It's all loose. If you were to hit something like that, you'd break every finger. Make sure it's firm when it's supposed to be firm. You got a tight fist. One of the most common things that I think causes this is there's a tip that says you're supposed to keep your hand loose until the moment of impact and then tighten. And a lot of people will try to do that because it's an advanced tip, but what they wind up doing is they never tighten their hand or get it tight enough, and they hit wrong and they break their hand, or they hyperextend their wrist and they wind up injured instead. So keep that fist tight the whole way through until you reach an advanced level at that kata, or very comfortable with it, before you start playing with going from soft to hard techniques within that form. Okay, so moving on to tip number 4, that is the head positioning. This one I see all the time because people tend to think about their kata and they're trying to remember it, especially when they haven't done it enough. They'll do the move and you'll see them looking up, eyes rolling in the back of their head. Again, looks undisciplined, unfocused. You want to keep your eyes in the direction that it's supposed to be focused on or striking. Now there are some katas, where you strike one way and look another. So obviously those are going to be a little different. But for the most part, most katas, you look the direction, that's the direction you're going to be looking. Keep your eyes focused on your target. You shouldn't be punching this way but looking off this way. So pay attention to that head movement and try to keep it constantly looking at where you're about to strike. All right, tip number 5. And this one is to help with abbreviations, and that is to pause between movements. Too often I see people, they try to go from one movement to the next, and they try to make it one continuous flow. Because a lot of Kung Fu movements look continuous and flow like that. It look great. I do it myself. But you want to stop and show a definitive end to your movement before you start the next movement. That way, it doesn't look abbreviated. Again, I'll use Heian Shodan as an example because it's a simple kata. So if I don't wait until this stops before I start my punch, I wind up with this sloppy looking rushed form versus stop, focus, hit. Sorry, teaching Kempo brings that up, whereas teaching Shodan brings it down. So anyways, you want to pause between each movement to show the finish, and then you can take time while you're there to check your stance, check your hands, make sure they're tight, make sure your withdrawing hand where it's supposed to be. And if you go through your forms and you pay attention to those 5 things on every movement, and you'll know where they are because there will be a pause between every movement, then that will help you improve your forms a whole lot. I hope this video has helped you. Hopefully this will make it easier for you to improve your forms. Thank you for watching.